Lying on the hospital bed, absent-mindedly picking at my nail's cuticle as I impatiently waited for the examination to conclude, the discomfort was almost unbearable. All I yearned for was clarity about my medical condition. Suddenly, a sharp gasp followed by a thud reverberated through the room, and I strained to see what had occurred. Despite my limited mobility due to the intrusive earpiece camera, I managed to peer over the edge of the bed and confirm my fears. A body had indeed fallen to the floor. The kind nurse who had been tending to me and offering water moments earlier lay unconscious on the ground. My gaze shifted to the doctor, whose pallor mirrored that of the nurse, gripping the bed as if grappling with an apparition. In the midst of the chaos, the doctor pressed the panic button, sending my anxiety spiraling. Was this an emergency triggered by the nurse's sudden collapse, or was it somehow connected to my own health concerns? I waited in agonizing uncertainty before finally succumbing to the need to schedule an appointment with the doctor. The relentless agony of waking up daily with an intensifying headache is a sensation not easily conveyed. At times, it felt as if an entity resided within my skull, accompanied by eerie, persistent sounds akin to distant rustling leaves. On the day of our pivotal SAH exam, I found myself seated in the corridor, grappling with a challenging math problem. The pain reached excruciating levels, as if the looming wall clock audibly ticked like a time bomb within my head. I typically relied on headache medication to alleviate my suffering, but I had none in my possession as they were strictly prohibited within the examination hall. That particular day stands out as the most excruciating I've ever endured, and yet I found myself utterly powerless to change the circumstances. It was the culmination of my academic journey, the final exam, and leaving the examination hall wasn't an option. Throughout the preceding days, the relentless headaches had been accompanied by a peculiar, unsettling sensation deep within my left ear. My first assumption was that it might be residual water, prompting me to tilt my head vigorously after every shower, attempting to dislodge any lingering droplets. However, this unsettling sensation persisted, growing increasingly uncomfortable with every movement. Oddly, when I remained still or lay down, it seemed to subside, further fueling my suspicion that it was related to water or earwax. But the headaches, they were unlike anything I'd ever encountered. That particular day marked the zenith of their torment. I reached a critical juncture. I either had to leave the examination hall or risk an embarrassing and disruptive upheaval. Summoning every ounce of determination, I rose to my feet with the distant exit in my sights. Yet, my journey to the door was abruptly halted. It's as though I blacked out, for the next thing I remember was waking up in the nurse's office. She was familiar with my struggles with these headaches, likely my most frequent visitor. Compassionately, she urged me to seek professional help, even offering to assist me in contacting a specialist. Gratefully, I declined, assuring her that I'd enlist my mother's aid in making the necessary arrangements. While I remained in the nurse's care for the following hours, a growing realization gnawed at me. This couldn't continue. What I endured wasn't normal, and the fear that gripped me was profound, dreading a dire diagnosis from the doctor, perhaps a brain tumor or some rare ailment. That night, the nurse's earnest words echoed in my mind, serving as a catalyst for a pivotal decision. Without proper medical intervention, my condition would undoubtedly deteriorate. And so, I found myself in a hospital room, reclined on a bed, as an otolaryngologist stared in disbelief at the screen before her. Beside me, a nurse lay unconscious, a stark testament to the gravity of the situation. Doctor. I managed to muster in a hushed tone. Her countenance, marked by shock and trepidation, mirrored my own. Little did I know, her next words would send shivers down my spine. She gazed at me, attempting to maintain a professional demeanor before delivering the astonishing diagnosis. There's a spider living in your ear. I wasn't particularly arachnophobic, but this revelation hit me like a thunderbolt. A spider had taken up residence in my ear. I might have dismissed it as a jest had the nurse not collapsed from sheer shock. In that instant, several other medical professionals rushed into the room, with one nurse hastily retreating upon glimpsing the screen. "Get it out!" I shrieked, my voice tinged with panic. "Get it out immediately, please." My desperation outweighed any concern for the camera still lodged in my ear, and I yanked it out before sliding off the bed, my sole intent being to escape that horrifying revelation. Driven by an inexplicable compulsion, I shook my head vigorously, as though I could somehow expel the arachnid myself. The doctor who had conducted the examination embraced me and gently urged me to sit down. Assuring me they would extract the intruder promptly, she explained that the spider was deeply entrenched in my ear canal, necessitating the use of specialized tools. A wave of disgust overwhelmed me as I squirmed in disbelief. How had this bizarre event come to pass? The other two doctors seemed equally repulsed, and the nurse who had fainted departed without even inquiring about my well-being. It appeared such occurrences were exceedingly rare in this medical setting. As I lay still, waiting for the procedure to commence, my mind raced, contemplating when and how this unsettling intrusion had taken place. The onset of those relentless headaches traced back to about 2.5 years ago, accompanied by unsettling sounds that seemed to emanate from within my head, as if something were in motion inside. My desperate attempts to rid myself of these sensations yielded no relief. The headaches, consistently triggered by an insistent itch in my ear, became increasingly unbearable. I had initially prodded my ear incessantly, believing it might alleviate the discomfort. However, the more I poked and prodded, the worse it seemed to become. Eventually, I resigned myself to leaving it be and resorted to powerful painkillers as my only solace. If I were to pinpoint the precise origin of this peculiar ordeal, it would lead me to the conclusion that it commenced at the close of a memorable summer, immediately following a school camping expedition. It was an unforgettable journey bridging the gap between middle school and high school, where we ventured into the great outdoors to bond with our new classmates. The camping trip had been an incredible experience, with nights spent beneath the starry sky in the heart of nature. It was then that the realization struck me: the outdoor camping excursion. That must have been when it all began. Yet I couldn't fathom how a spider could endure dwelling within someone's ear for such an extended period. While it might be cool and damp in there, the thought of it surviving so long boggled my mind. Considering the numerous occasions I had attempted to alleviate the discomfort with syringe-delivered water, the revelation that the incessant sounds and unsettling crawling sensation stemmed from an actual living spider dwelling within my ear sent shivers down my spine. Had the doctors not restrained me while they extracted it, I doubt I could have endured it any longer. It felt as though legions of spiders were traversing every inch of my body. Fears of potential egg-laying and baby spiders inhabiting my brain tormented my thoughts. The mere contemplation of such a horrifying scenario brought tears to my eyes, a rarity for me. But in that moment, I couldn't suppress the overwhelming emotional response. The sheer disbelief overwhelmed me. How could this surreal nightmare be happening to me, and I had remained oblivious for so long? How could I have been so foolish, convincing myself that it was merely earwax or water causing all this torment and agony? Those excruciating 10 minutes of poking and probing felt like an eternity, but eventually I caught a fleeting glimpse of the creature before the doctor disposed of it. To say it was massive would be an understatement. This wasn't some minuscule spider. It was a substantial brown behemoth that I can barely talk about without a wave of nausea engulfing me. The doctors shared my horror, their expressions mirroring my shock. However, before I could sit up, they insisted on cleansing my ear with a specialized solution to ensure the removal of any lingering remnants of web. Web? The very thought made my skin crawl. On the bright side, the spider was indeed lifeless. The disheartening news, though, was that it wasn't just any spider. It was a venomous brown raccoon spider that had set up residence within my ear. My body began to shake involuntarily. The sheer revulsion was overwhelming. Not only had a spider invaded my ear, establishing a lair there for over 2 years, but it had spun a web within me. As absurd as it sounded, it was as if I had extended a personal invitation to the arachnid, saying, "Welcome, spider, please, make yourself at home." The solution they planned to administer in my ear aimed to eliminate any remnants of webs or spider eggs, but the psychological trauma had already taken hold. They meticulously removed the remainder of the web, explaining that the spider had likely perished after a year, deprived of sustenance and hydration, but its deep-seated presence within my ear canal had triggered my prolonged suffering, manifesting as those relentless headaches. They reassured me that there wouldn't be any lasting damage, and I couldn't help but feel a profound sense of relief. Not only had I been fortunate to escape unscathed, but I was also incredibly lucky to be alive. I learned that the spider that had taken up residence in my ear was one of the 3 most deadly species found in the United States, and the odds of such an incident occurring were astonishingly slim, approximately 1 in a million. My luck seemed ironic, but it was a stark reality I had to grapple with. I hadn't even disclosed the details of this ordeal to my parents or anyone else, for that matter. Now, faced with the aftermath, I pondered my next steps. While I was alive, I knew I wasn't quite the same. How could one possibly return to normalcy after such a harrowing experience? The realization that I could have perished weighed heavily on me. What if the spider had bitten me? As morbid as it may sound, I felt a strange relief that it had met its demise when it did. I harbored no ill wishes toward any living being, but the thought that had it not been ensnared in its own web, it might have crawled deeper into my ear and inflicted a fatal bite upon me sent shivers down my spine. Even recounting this tale brings back haunting memories, but my psychologist encouraged me to share it, believing that it would aid in my healing process. Yes, I'm currently undergoing therapy. I wish I could claim that the spider's removal marked the end of my ordeal and that life returned to normal, but that would be far from the truth. While the headaches eventually subsided, they were replaced by persistent nightmares, and to this day, I find solace in sleeping with earplugs, guarding against the irrational fear of another spider intrusion. My psychologist assures me that these lingering effects will diminish with time, but the rushing sound in my ear remains, and every hint of head discomfort revives the haunting memories of those relentless headaches. If I could impart one piece of advice, it would be this: never underestimate or ignore any persistent pain or discomfort you may experience, as I did. It's always wiser to seek medical attention to ensure it's nothing serious. Though, and perhaps consider opting for a tent when camping outdoors, just to err on the side of caution.